If we do nothing, we can't expect anything to change. If we do too much, things will get aggravated. Control of symptoms is a clinical technique which I'll often use to help guide people with activity when they have pain or an injury. So often the approach will be just don't do anything. But the problem with that is if we don't do anything, it often slows down our recovery. So actually getting people to do stuff does seem to help them recover more quickly. But control of symptoms is a really nice guide to enable people to do that. So what we do with control of symptoms is we look at a few different criteria. So the first criteria is the pain must be manageable for that person. So the person has to be okay with that level of pain. And that will vary from person to person, by the way, but as long as they're okay with that pain, then that's one element of control of symptoms. The next one is we don't want pain that builds. So if pain builds, we've lost control of symptoms. Now, building pain, what we'll often see, someone will do an activity, pain will start to build, and then it will often either plateau or it will even start to drop down. So that's fine. If we have that, we've got control of symptoms. If the pain builds, but actually doesn't plateau, and actually just continues to build and build and build, so that's what I would refer to as building pain. So that means we haven't got control of symptoms. Now, in that scenario, we need to stop that activity. Now, the most important one is any pain we have, we want to be back to our baseline, and that baseline may not be a zero, but we want it to be back to our baseline within 24 hours. So say we do something, pain builds up, levels out, that's fine, and then 24 hours later, actually you're back to where you were. So if you've met all those criteria, the pain was manageable, didn't build, the pain you had settled back to your baseline within 24 hours, we've got control of symptoms and we're okay to do that activity. If the pain doesn't settle back to the baseline within 24 hours, then it doesn't mean we have to stop that activity. It means we just have to adjust what that activity is. So for example, say we do an activity, the pain's manageable, builds up, levels out, but we're okay with that. 24 hours later, it hasn't quite gone back to where we started. All we need to do is just trim that activity down a little bit. And if we keep using this process, at some point we'll find a level of activity which we can tolerate, and then we can do that activity. And what will happen is the body will start to adapt to that activity, and then we'll be able to do more. And so we can use control of symptoms to get people doing things which will help them recover more quickly, but it stops us putting a line for everything, and it helps give people some a bit more quality of life with their pain. So the other way I'll look at control of symptoms is, if we do nothing, we can't expect anything to change. If we do too much, things will get aggravated. So control of symptoms lets us be in that middle ground. And if we're in that middle ground, the body will start to adapt. And as it starts to adapt, then we'll start to improve and we'll be able to do more and have less pain. So a practical example of where we might use this, we could use let's use a runner with knee pain, but we can use almost any scenario. So a runner with knee pain. So we've got this runner with knee pain, and if they go for a run, the pain builds up, but then plateaus out, so flattens out. 24 hours later, if that's gone back to where it was, we've got control of symptoms. Now say that was a 20-minute run. So we do that 20-minute run. We've got manageable symptoms, the symptoms don't build, 24 hours later they're back to where they were, so we've got control of symptoms. What I would then do with that person, I would then want to prove that isn't a fluke. So I'd often repeat that activity 3 times to just make sure it's not a fluke. So if we do it those 3 times, we know that that activity, that 20 minutes of running is okay. So what we can then do is we can then think about increasing it. So we'll do a little increase, maybe let's say for example, add 5 minutes. We then apply our control of symptoms again. So if we've got control of symptoms, perfect, we need to prove it's not a fluke. We'll do it 2 more times, we'll do it 3 times in total, so I call that the rule of 3. And if each time we've got control of symptoms, we can progress it again. Now, at some point we might hit a wall with that, but or we might find actually at 25, with 20 minutes is okay, we've got our control of symptoms. We do 25 minutes and our pain doesn't settle within 24 hours. So now what we know is we know our threshold for running with this knee pain is somewhere between 20 and 25 minutes. So what we do is I'd pick maybe sort of somewhere halfway in between, so I'd maybe just go for 23 minutes. So we know 20 minutes is okay, we know 25 minutes isn't okay, we'll try 23 minutes. At some point, we'll find a level which is okay. So say for example 23 minutes is okay, right, so we repeat that 3 times, we use our rule of 3, and then we can think about increasing again. So we just keep iterating, and each time we just sort of think, can we just sort of like progressively nudge it up a little bit more? And that's a really nice way to get someone back into what they're doing and actually help the body recover at the same time. So let's now look at a different example. So if we took, say, gardening with back pain. So say somebody does 10 minutes of gardening and their back pain builds up, but it flattens out, but they're actually okay with that level of pain. And then 24 hours later, they're okay, their pain is back to where they were. So we've got control of symptoms. So again, we need to prove that's not a fluke. So we get them to do that sort of 2 more times. So we use this rule of 3. So they've done it 3 times in total. Each time they've had control of symptoms. We can then think about, okay, let's get them to do a bit more gardening. So they might be able to do 15 minutes of gardening. Again, if that's okay, if they've got control of symptoms, they can do it repeated 3 times, so they can then build it up. If they hit a point where they haven't got control of symptoms, so if their pain lasts for more than 24 hours or hasn't fully settled back down within 24 hours, we know that's where their threshold is. So we then just look, so say they're okay at sort of 25 minutes, they try and do half an hour and they have a problem. So we know their threshold for gardening, their tolerance, is somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes. So we can either stick at 25 minutes for a bit longer, give the body a bit more time to adapt, or we can actually think, right, well, it's somewhere between 25 and 30 minutes, let's try 27 minutes. So we can just keep iterating, find the level which we can tolerate, find the level we can control our symptoms, and then just start to build it and build it and build it. There's a couple of traps with control of symptoms that we just need to be aware of. So the first one is recovery. So just because we have control of symptoms, it doesn't mean that we've recovered from an activity. So often in the early stages of control of symptoms, we just need to be careful about not doing an activity on 2 consecutive days, just to make sure that we've got enough time to have fully recovered from an activity before we do it again. The other trap with control of symptoms is overreaching, and there's a few mechanisms which cause us to overreach. So the typical ones we see is thinking we should be able to do more just because actually where our threshold is quite low. So sometimes we think, well, I must be able to do more than that. So that's a really common one. Comparing ourselves to what we used to be able to do is another really common one. So I used to be able to do this, so therefore I should be able to do it now, and that can cause us to overreach. And then the other one is looking at what other people do. So, well, actually they can do that, so therefore I must be able to do that. So to a large extent, the threshold is at where it's at, and the only way to move the threshold is to work within our control of symptoms. And if we do that, the threshold will start to move. But if we overreach, the threshold may actually even go in the wrong direction.